Welcome back to another episode of Watch Tim Do Stuff. Today we're going to be putting on the luggage racks on a Tiger 900 Rally Pro. All right, so here's the haul. We have the mounting plate for the top box, a variety of different mounts for the side cases. These side cases with the Triumph branding in black. And then we also have the top case in black. Now the only thing I'm going to have to figure out, which I'm not sure if I have correctly, is the lock mechanism, which I believe came with the bike. I think they call them the key cores. So how I think I'm going to approach this is it looks like I'm going to have to do some mounting points here, and then potentially look at areas here, and a couple other places, but we'll figure that out. I believe the first thing we're probably going to want to do is figure out the top mount and then these side brackets. Okay, for the top box approach, we see these 4 bolts here. They seem to correspond with these brass fittings. And what I think we're going to do is we're going to be swapping out these with the bolts that came with the kit, and then sliding these over top, and then that should fit over top, somewhat like that. And for the pannier mount, what we're going to do is we see this bolt, and the underside of this guy is going to be where we fit the bracket. It should fit over top like this, and then this is going to screw in the bottom of that. So first I'm going to do is I found the bolt as suspected. These are going to be the ones that slide over the top. So we're going to remove these 4 bolts, and then we're going to mount the top plate before moving on to the brackets. So as I start with this, I've found out the bolts are about the size of a Stanley. I think this is a 13. I'm not exactly sure which size or this, but I'm just going to show in the video, and y'all can tell me whether or not this is metric or standard. One trick I like to use when removing bolts, especially to something that's attached to plastic or metal components, is start off with 1 bolt at a time and then rotate based on the level of torque. So that way we don't incur any stress at any particular joint. This is especially important when working with soft plastics such as bodywork. So like so. So after the initial torquing, I can start pulling these out. All right, as you can see, these are all almost done. So you'll see me I'm been slowly torquing them out one by one using the wrench, but now we're to the point where I can just take them out. The idea by doing this one at a time is super important because you don't want to stress the components. Now, in this particular case, these are not so tight, but if I was working with a component where like stress or like the over tightening could potentially break something, I want to go nice and slow. All right, now all the bolts are out. You can see that the older bolts are much shorter than the newer bolts because the newer bolts need to be able to pass both the mounting point but also the clearance of the new mount points. There also appears to be a size difference, so I'm assuming that the bolts in the rear are going to be these smaller bolts, but I'll let you know whether or not that's correct. Okay, so we're first going to try to mount, slide that in here. That looks like it's roughly seating. I suspect these are a little bit deeper. Okay, so the first step here is we're going to mount we're going to put the new mounting plate on top of this. We see these 4 holes. We're going to try sliding this on top. And like so, you can see that we can see the bottom of here and also in here. I still suspect the rear ones are going to be shorter than this one, but we should probably start with the front ones. All right, so I've got these partially inserted just to hold this up while I start work on the back ones. I'm keeping these loose, and we're going to first see whether or not the rear ones are actually the right size or not, or if the longer ones need to go into the rear holes over here. So we actually have a small problem. So right now, this plate cover actually covers like a portion of the bolt where I actually need to get the wrench in to actually turn it. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take it off, and then with these using Allen wrenches, I'm going to take this top plate off so I can access the bottom plate. I'm going to attach the bottom plate first and then reattach this. The bright side confirmed that the taller bolts are indeed for the front. All right, after doing a little more investigation, figured out that the shorter bolts are indeed for the back, and you should probably install these first as the carrier is going to be more loose. I find naturally it actually drifts left and right when not fully torqued down. So as you can see, I've started torquing down these bolts. I'm doing them like a little bit at a time on each one, just to make sure that it's even, like it's pressure, because I don't want to crack anything underneath. And then I also want to kind of demonstrate this kind of shifting movement. This is pretty useful because if you're wrench is either too big or not quite aligned, it's helpful to have this kind of play back and forth. It's going to be interesting to see whether or not that actually is still there once the all bolts are kind of torqued down. So now that we can see that these are starting to be a little more seated, they're both equally torqued down. They're still loose, you can still move it. I'm going to start putting in the front so I can align this and then start torquing it down. I like to hand thread bolts in the beginning so I can feel about if it's resistant and if it's aligned. If I see a serious amount of play in the beginning, that means something's totally wrong. And we'll do the other one right here. Okay, and now I'm seeing a little bit of pressure. That means I'm probably good to bring the wrench in. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna work each of these a little bit at a time. In this case, I'm having to turn this because it's super loose. Do the same one over here. In fact, that one might just even rotate, so let me try that one too. And we'll rotate this one. Cool. We'll rotate this one a little bit. I'm a little sloppy here, but it's super loose, so we're still okay. Then I'm gonna go in here. I'm gonna start tightening this one up as well. And then once I start getting a little bit of resistance, I'll be able to like kind of crank it back. But we still have a little bit of play. All right, we'll go over here. Do that as well. I would like to get something a little thinner for this, but from a wrench perspective, I don't really have anything like that at the moment. That's something with toolbox that'll help. I'm not quite sure that this is actually, I feel like there's a lot of wear and tear, and also you can see some of the black marks coming on this. So what I'm gonna use is a number 13. This is a little bit smaller and it should be able to go in a little looser. So here, let's see if I can get that in there. There we go. So now I feel like I'm actually making some progress here. And then we're making some progress in tightening it down. So we're gonna do the other side. There we go. All right, and we'll do this until completion. All right, now that we're fully torqued down, thanks to the smaller wrench, let's see if that play is still there. It looks like it's still there, so it's interesting. It'll actually go left and right. I think that's by design. It appears like all the mounting points appear correct, but I think there's like some rubber spacers in here or something that's allowing that to occur. So here's an example. So I'm just trying to find a fixed point here. So we see this. So that's interesting, it's got that play. So next up, we're gonna try putting on the top box. All right, so there are two kind of like points here that are gonna hook into the hooks up in front. And then there's kind of a latch here, which should have pop into the back. You can see the back latch just out of view, but about here. And then the two hooks are up here. So first, I'm going to try to align these as best as possible. There we go. And there we go, we're hooked in. Now that we're hooked in, still a little bit of play, but looks good enough for highway usage, honestly. So now we're hooked in. So I still have to put the passenger backrests on, and now we're gonna move on to the panniers. So just like for the top box, we have 2 bolts for each side for the bracket here, for the pannier. And I'm gonna I suspect with the top box that the rear bolt is going to be shorter than the front bolt. So I'll let you know if that's actually the case. Just confirm both of these are gonna be size 13. And the third mounting point should be right here. So just like with the top case bolts, I'm gonna loosen these both a little bit at a time and swap to the other side to reduce any felt pressure. As you can see, there's a really torque down on there, so I'm gonna just do a little bit at a time. I'm gonna try to loose. Then we're gonna try to get off for whatever reason. That's super tight, so we're gonna try to get off. There we go. And we're gonna go over here and loosen a little bit on this side. Judging by the amount of resistance, it feels like it's gonna be the same thing with the top case where it was the larger bolt in front and the slightly smaller bolt in the rear. Word of wisdom here. Make sure when you're working with a wrench that you position it away and probably moving forward on both sides. If you come up the other way, especially when you don't have enough clearance, you might smack this or this. You saw with the size of the bolts, this is probably the most time consuming part of this entire process, is just taking these two bolts out. I've been going at this for about probably 5 to 10 minutes on each, and you know, that's the progress. So we're making some progress here, but it's taking quite a bit because this was taking a while. All right, and I figured out why this was taking me so long. So apparently, we've got this contraption here, which I'm not sure, but I think it's tied to like the heated seat or some sort of battery or electrical system. The reason why this is taking so long to come off is actually this is spinning on the back end. So I need to get access to this side, and I need to unscrew these as well. I suspect I've got something similar going on back here, but we've got this thing in the way. I'm not entirely sure what this is. It says Triumph OK on it. It's got some like regulations of sorts. And then I've got some sort of like component here and like a rubber tube fitting. And then appears to be some sort of like USB outlet. So maybe this is like a USB charger in a space for a phone. I'm not quite sure. I'll play with that later, but the biggest thing is I need to get access to the inside, the underside of this to undo those bolts so I can loosen this part open and then put the rack on. All right, so what I ended up doing was just removing the seats just so I can get access to this interior bolt. I wanted to get a better angle on this. So to remove the seat, you actually just twist the key and that'll allow you to, it'll detach that mechanism, which will allow you to pull the back seat off from like this position, and then the front seat just pops off. So I've removed these two bolts, and now this is coming loose. I've had to remove two of the, I think it's the heated seat power cords, and then we can see we've got a hinge here. So this entire thing wants to start moving with that hinge. However, just my luck, I suspect I may need to get this part off, which may require this whole assembly to come off. So that'll be fun. So in retrospect, I probably should have started with the panniers first. As now this is attached, I actually need to remove potentially this bracket to get into there. So, and because I installed this without keying it first, I actually can't remove it. So I've got the key core pulled out from the packet from when I bought it. And now I'm gonna go ahead and install that and get this off. So for the installation of the key core, all I did was put the key core on top of the key and then push it right in, and it just locked in place. I suspect because when the key is entered into the key core, it's compressing some of the strings, which allows it to fit. And then once you press it in and remove it, it should get stuck, which is by design, and which will allow us to unlock it. And then we use this contraption here to pull it off. It's kind of a pulling motion here. What I'm gonna try to do first is to unscrew this top one and see how much of this comes loose and see if I can get this loose without having to take this piece off. And if I have to take this piece off, then we're gonna start with unbolting our four friends here. And we'll see how this goes. As I kind of suspected after I undid this piece, after a little bit of investigation, it looks like if I get this loose from this, then I should be able to pull it right off, which means that if I take these parts off, it should come right off. I also found something kind of interesting. It looks like I could have also, if I only needed to adjust the front ones, I might be able to get access to them by undoing this piece here and potentially this belt, which I think covers the battery compartment. And it should get me access to underneath this, which would allow me to kind of give me enough leeway to get in there. But for safety reasons, and I don't want to break any plastic, we're going to remove this component, and then we should be able to pull this piece off, which should allow us to undo, if we do undo these, to just pull this part right off. Let's see what happens. All right, so now we'll take this off. Hopefully I don't have to take it all off. I'm going to see if I can get these two pieces loose and see if we can get this part loose, but it might be one of those cases where I take this piece off, then I'm able to lift this piece up, it'll go to that hinge, and then we'll get access to both sets of bolts. Okay, so with a little bit of applied force and thankfully no damage. I was able to actually kind of like press down on the top and kind of do a pull motion this way. And this got free of this contraption, which is actually kind of interesting. It reminds me of like a bike brake or on a bicycle. But there's the bolt that I need to get off. So I've got that on both sides. And then I should have access to it over here as well. So now I've got the electrical components here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to probably move some of the bolts out of the way so I can work on them, hopefully not damage any, and see if I can get, starting with this side off first, or this side loose first. Once I have this side loose, I then can put on the new pannier bolts onto those two positions there. So my plan is to use a pair of pliers like this, kind of just hold the bolt in place when I come around at the other side with the wrench. All right, so as suspected, the smaller bolt came out of the rear and the longer bolt came out of the front. So I'm assuming with the new bolts, the same is going to be applied. So now that I've got these off, I'm going to go ahead and start mounting the pannier rack here with the bigger bolts, which I have over there. And once I'm done, I'll let you know how that goes. So here's how this has gone so far. So the first thing I was able to do is you're actually able to like thread this in. There's a certain amount of like the last mile of this that is like screw in, which can hold it in place. And on this side, it almost slips in completely, and then you have to attach it from that bolt and then tighten down. So I've got this initially hooked up. I'm still working on this one. This is probably going to be the most challenging bolt. So my plan is to tighten the back one and the bottom one to kind of like put it in place, and then I'll tighten this one down all the way. Now that we got these three in place, it's fairly sturdy. I could tighten a bit down more, but I want to give it a little more flexion because I'm going to need to put the bracket that covers between these on next. We're going to start the other side. What's going to be interesting in here is I'm going to have to figure out a way to unseat that so I can get access to the bolt. I'm going to want that clearance so I can use one of the wrenches to hold the other side and kind of like push this in. The solution I went with was to actually just gently pull this through, which means I should be able to collapse it and be able to get access to this bolt. I think that should work for what we're trying to do. I just got to remember to put it back. I've been also using this wrench to kind of hold the bolt in place, such as over here, if I don't have enough clearance to bring another wrench in. We talk about clearance, be very careful here. I'm going to use the smaller wrench and kind of like move in this sort of direction. When I work with a bigger wrench, I want to be sure that I'm not scraping up the exhaust. So this is what I'm talking about for that last mile. So as you can see, the bolt is firmly seated, like I can't necessarily pull it out. However, actually the nut's already fallen off. I need to go retrieve that in a second. But what you're going to have to do, and the reason why this works as kind of the first bolt to take off, is that you can see you can't see the threading yet, I don't think, but I got to pull it out with the threading first because it's first threaded into the frame, and then it's threaded into the nut at the end. So the exhaust side stuff is off, so I've got this out and I've got this out. I ended up using like the plier method just to hold the nut in the back and then just pull it out this way. So the plan is for this side is to use this side, which uses that last mile to kind of just hold the assembly in place, because once it's screwed in, it's fairly secure enough to kind of keep going. Then I'm going to try to get this one threaded as much as I can. And before I tighten it down, I'm going to attach that side. Okay, for our current state, here is where we're at. So this, because this is partially threaded in, this is kind of holding this in place, which gave me enough room to kind of attach the bottom here. And the next thing I'm going to do is use the centerpiece and actually get this mounted here, which primarily is just pushing the long bolt all the way through and then securing it with a nut. And then I'll go in and tighten this down and we should be good on this side. And before I forget, I'm going to try to put this back into the seating here with this rubber. See, it slides right back into place. All right, there we go, and that's fixed. The next thing I need to do is just finish up on this guy, and what I'll need to do is I'll need to put the nut here while I'm working it in. It's kind of annoying, so that's the reason why I like to work on those two pieces first. That one's pretty much just needs like a quick tightening down. This one's good to go. I've tightened it fully in, and then I just need to complete this one and we're good to go. All right, so current status. So we've got connected all the way to the frame. We've got access to this. I need to put on some stuff. rehook up some connectors. But the next thing I want to do is I want to get this metal rack on. The metal rack looks like this, and we're going to want to have it in here, and going to want to make sure that it lines up correctly. So this is going to be probably a challenging bit. I'll post it when it's done, but I suspect I may need to loosen up these couple sections here in order to give me that play, in order to get this to fit on both sides. So we'll keep you posted on how that went. Good news, when it was loose, I was able to kind of like just force it into, or bend it. I've got everything tightened down now, so all this is solid. I've got the frame done both sides. It's feeling super solid. So the next thing we're going to do is kind of put it back together and put all the components back into place, put all the side bags on and what have you, and the seat, and we're going to get rock and rolling. But before we do that, I wanted to quickly show you how I'm getting this back into place. So you might have noticed earlier, you know, I unscrewed a couple things. I removed this top gap here, and it's still, you know, still attached down here. I didn't want to take this apart. So my method of doing this is to go under here, kind of bend this forward. It kind of flexes a little bit. I wouldn't do this if it were not new, so the plastic is still flexible. If you're doing this at a much later date, this bike is, you know, a couple months old. So if you're doing that, I'd recommend actually going through like other steps. I'll link a video that does a much more professional installation, but okay. And so the methodology of which I've been using to do this is I'm using my fingers to kind of push this in right under, and I've been careful to kind of avoid this piece, but essentially I've taken the captive nut off this component here, but essentially what will happen, using both fingers, like flexing here, I'm going to try to get it under that, and then once it's under that, I can then push everything into place. So I use both hands, like one finger here, one finger here, to kind of like give me the flexion. So it's still kind of bent right here. What I'm about to do is I wanted to mention this piece. So I can push it up under, and I want to make sure that I get this behind this piece. And then that should allow me to notice I'm lined up with all the holes. So now I'm just going to bolt everything back in, and we're good to go. Start our reinstallation by putting the captive nut, or in some places, I guess in the data center world, we call this a rack nut. And then we're also gonna put this bolt back into place. And then I'm gonna start working my way back down. So I've got these 4 screws back into place, and then this screw back into place. So what's next is I'm gonna put the Triumph cap back on here. I need to screw that in, and then I'm good to start attaching the seats and other parts. Okay, so to push the seat in, you're first going to make sure that it's aligned up here in the lip. You're going to push it down like this, and then kind of make sure it's aligned in the rear. And then you're going to push it until it sits all the way forward, and then it should be secure there. All right, and got a better angle here so I can actually use both hands for this. So to attach the rear seat, we're going to push down. We're going to first slide it in a forward motion. It's going to be pushed right up in the center. It should be aligned under the center seat. We're then going to pull or move the key here, and then it should slide into place. Once you hear a click, release this, and then now it's secure. Okay, for this section, I'm going to be using this smaller wrench to bolt these in. So I first got these rear bolts, the shorter bolts, tightened in. They're about halfway in, gives me a little bit of play to kind of like work with these front ones. And so now we'll work on the front ones, and then we'll attach the rear box. Now we're all bolted in. This still has a little bit of play, I've noticed. I'm not sure quite what reason why it does this, but I think it has to do with like we've got rubber connections or something, or we want to have a little bit of play, especially when we have to wiggle off a box without damaging either the luggage or the bike itself. So it does move, not sure why, but there we go. All right, and now it is time to attach the luggage. There are 2 hooks near and here at the end, so we want to make sure we first line up with those. Lock it in here. Move it to the back so you can see what's going on here. And then Now this is locked. This is stop right position. If I want to unlock, it's here, and then I kind of pop it off here. Otherwise, lock it here. Place the end cap to keep dirt out, and we're done there. I wanted to give an example of coring the box before I start opening them up and mounting them. So cores are typically come with, like on your bike purchase, you're typically issued 3, 1 for your top box, 2 for your side cases. How you actually, so if you notice by default, they're kind of hard to kind of fit in and they don't go in naturally. That's by design. You'll notice that these little teeth are kind of springy. Those are kind of the latches, and if they're in their correct order, it'll open and turn. So what we do is we take our key, put that in, and then how we know whether or not we're coring it correctly is we're going to be able to push it in. So notice here I've got a little bit of difficulty. If I flip it the other way, vertical, and before we actually go in there, you'll notice there's kind of like a divot or groove at the bottom and a groove at the top, kind of similar to these. So what we're going to want to do is we need to find the combination to what will let us core it. So first, we're going to try this direction. If that doesn't work, we'll try to line it up with the top. And then if it works, what will happen is it will slide in rather nicely. So let's see how this is fitting. Not quite. Not quite close though. All right, so let's flip it up in the opposite direction. There we go. So basically, so what I'm doing is just kind of pushing in. And once you can remove the key, you got it right. So typically I find it's either kind of in like one of the upward or vertical position or in the a reverse position. So we know it'll work if we can turn it. Let's see the latch open, close. So it's open. We're able to kind of like pull this open and we're able to get into the top case. So that's exciting. And I believe there's some other stuff I need to put on here for reflective material. But first, let's get this on there. Now I'm going to talk about mounting the luggage to the side racks here. A couple things I want to mention are these kind of like areas, which is kind of like a clippy like metal. Clippy like metal. Kind of see that there. The other thing are these grooves, or sorry, not these grooves, it's like little notches. So these coincide with these moving items, as well as these notches on the bottom. So what we're going to do, provided I have the right side lined up, I think this is actually for the other side, is we're going to be trying to align underneath these and then mount on top of those, and that should lock. And I think what we need to do is to make sure that we're in the unlocked position in order to do this. Once we stop it, the lock should close. So it turns out that was the right position. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to demonstrate on the other side. But essentially all I did was unlock the case, mount it on the bottom first, and then push the top in, and that clicked in place. One thing that I noticed was kind of interesting is that there was a green thing that came, had a different color, and this one was still red. So I'm going to do this a couple of times to see whether or not that changes. But you know, if at least one side is in when it turns red. All right, so to repeat, we were gonna take the bottom of the case, which if you see these items, we're gonna push these on first. And then we've got the metal pieces on the top, which are gonna kind of move and kind of attach right under the Triumph logo there. So what I'm gonna do first is make sure that this is in the unlocked position. We're gonna push this on like that. And I'm going to make sure I do a really nice push on the top until both of these items are green. And if I ever miss this or don't think I hit this correctly, you can pull this tab on this side, and that's similar to the top case. That's how that opens. So we're going to demonstrate how to fix this, since this is something I messed up on the other side. On this side, you'll notice that both tabs are green, so that means it's secure and locked in place. If you're ever hitting the road, you probably want your bag secure. So what we're going to do now is demonstrate how to remove and put the case on, because we're going to fix this particular issue. All right, so to remove the top case, we're first going to remove the dust cover. We're going to put our key in here. Going to turn that to open it. And we're going to pull this out and then pull ourselves out. So that means the case is free. So again, we're going to try to put ourselves on these bottom two cleats here. And then we're going to give it a nice, good push and make sure that this second thing engages. So we're going to make sure that this happens, and so that we have both that are green. So with that good solid shove there, you can now see that both of these are in fact green, and we're good to go. All right, so now we have the mounts. We've got the mounted panniers, we've got the mounted box, and let's just take a quick look, and we got plenty of storage. I'm used to rocking just a quick 2-helmeter, so having this to be able to like put a helmet and also like putting additional camping gear. In addition, I kind of use that 40-liter Triumph bag, usually on the back mounted here. So this is going to be awesome to have a lot more room for moto camping. So next up, I'm going to be now using kind of the 3M sticky tape that came with it, but we're going to put the reflectors on the panniers, and we're also going to be putting on the back protection for the passenger. So what I learned once by going down, and I don't recommend this for anyone, is that this area and this area are going to probably, and this area down here are probably going to be the areas that are most affected by a fall. So even though we're going to have to replace the entire thing, I'd rather not replace these more than once. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that right about there. So now we've got the reflector on this side, and I'm going to do the other side. And here it is on the other side. So now that I've got the reflective tape done, I'm done with these. I'm going to go ahead and close these shut. Get that done. There we go. And now it's time to work on the passenger pads. All right, so my assumption is I'm going to be doing the seating in this configuration. So we're going to be taking this and mounting it up here. There are 3 sides of tape here, but I want to make sure that's up nice in here and kind of like fits the contour. There's a place where it kind of like wants to fit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the tape off and stick that on. And then I think the second one I'm going to be putting about here because I want to make sure that this has like some space for hinges. And I think that these are going to behave nicely. All right. And that's that, folks. We have the Tiger 900 Rally Pro all kitted up, ready to go, moto camping and wherever else. Hope you enjoyed the video. Until next time.